Hi, my name's Itali, and in this video I'll be drawing and shading a Silkwing in just black, white and greys. Just a reminder, this is a time-lapse video, so it does contain fast-moving and flashing images. Now, ever since I read the Wings of Fire books that contained the 4 wings dragons, I wanted to have a go at drawing them myself, as I haven't really drawn any creatures that has 4 sets of wings before, especially not dragons. So I was wanting to do this for quite a while, and I finally got the chance to sit down and draw some art for myself. I'm kind of glad it took me this long to have time to draw this dragon, as my anatomy has gotten much better in the last year. In fact, this picture kind of cemented in the idea that my drawings are much better this year than they were last year. As during the sketch itself, I was quite happy with most of the process. There is a bit of a point in the video where I'm trying to draw the legs and then I'm not very happy with them, but that's just because I was trying to imitate the legs that the original character designs had, and in the end I decided I just didn't like that look and I changed back to how I'd originally sketched them, and I was happy with them again. Now I am actually going to do a different colouring style with this dragon than what most of my other videos have. I have taken to colouring in monotone or shading in monotone, and then using a colour layer over top to do the actual colours of the dragon. Now I thought this might be fun to do for a random colour palette. So this video just contains the sketch and the shading of the dragon, so it will be completely shaded in black and white, and then in the next video I'll actually get a random color palette and color the dragon over top of the shaded layers. Now, despite this being the first time I've ever drawn a 4-winged dragon, I actually super like the idea of 4-winged dragons or dragonfly type winged dragons. I think they're a really neat idea, even though they're kind of impossible. I think it's cool to have 4 wings for maneuverability and the idea of being able to hover in place or stop or turn on a dime like a dragonfly does. So maybe one day I'll design my own 4-winged dragon the way I would imagine them being. I like the Silkwings, but I do feel like their wings are a little bit, like the second wings are a little bit useless. They're kind of like positioned like a butterfly wing, so I guess they would just move in time with the front wings, but that wouldn't give them much more maneuverability than just having one set of wings. But I do still think Silkwings are really cool, and I like most of the dragons, or all of the dragons they introduced in the latest series of Wings of Fire. I like the Silkwings and the Hive Wings and the Leaf Wings. I think they're all cool designs, and it makes it really hard for me to decide now what my favorite Wings of Fire dragon is. It used to be the Rain Wings and Ice Wings, but I don't know, I think Silkwings and Hive Wings are pretty cool too. I like lots of colors, and the Silkwings can be pretty much any color except for black. So they're also really good to do for random color challenges. I was just doing Rain Wings for random color challenges before, because they can also be any color, but I remembered that Silkwings can pretty much be anything as well, so I thought it's a good time to do this since I've been doing a lot of those lately. But yeah, I think Silkwings look cool. I'm just not sure how functional their 2-wing design would be, if it would be any kind of improvement on a 2-wing design on a dragon. Now, I'm nearly done with this sketch now. I did actually spend quite a long time getting this sketch right, so I spent about an hour and a half doing this. A lot of time was wasted on the legs that I just decided to go back to the original sketch with afterwards, and just to go with my own style rather than trying to copy the style of the legs that the original artist did. I don't know, I think it's kind of more fun to do your own spin on things anyway. So yeah, an hour and a half spent on the sketch, and then I spent an hour and 50 minutes doing the shading of the dragon itself, which is still the most time consuming part, as basically, even though I'm not adding color in, I'm still adding all the form to the dragon during the shading process. So when I do the color, there's a lot less time I need to spend adding color, since the shadow and light parts are all mostly done. So now I'm done with pretty much the body of this sketch, but I do still have to add on all the scales. Now normally I don't draw every single scale on a dragon because I find it time consuming, and a lot of the time scales are quite small and you wouldn't see the exact detail of them from different angles and different distances. But the Wings of Fire dragons all have pretty big scales and pretty much like, you know, they're pretty unique. You can see where they are and they kind of define what dragon is a Wings of Fire dragon. I mean, Silkwing's pretty easy to tell because it's got two sets of wings, but they do have a very defined scale pattern. So I did decide to do all of the scales in the sketch, which took me a long time, and I found a little bit painful because I'm not very good at doing straight lines or doing these sort of large plates across things and keeping the form of my sketch underneath. And I do find that it does hide a lot of the muscle detail that I'd drawn in, but again, it's kind of not a Wings of Fire dragon unless I do some of these scales details. And the Silkwings have very large plates across their legs and arms, so I did decide to draw all of these scales in this sketching process. So now I'm done with the sketch, I'm going to move on to the shading. I start with one flat color, which I have chosen to be a grey slightly darker than the midtones, as I have learnt that darker is better when doing this kind of thing. If you are having light parts or lightly coloured parts on the dragon, you do need to remember where those parts are and make sure you shade them in a lighter colour of grey. So generally speaking, the underside of most of the Wings of Fire or Silkwing dragons are lighter, so I did decide to start with the underside of the dragon, and I chose some lighter shades of grey to start shading in the belly. They also don't have scales or don't have large scales in this area, so I was free to follow the muscle form and not worry about covering it up with scales. I did also want to make sure that its antennae were nice and bright, so I chose some brighter colour or brighter shade of grey. I guess you call that white, closer to white than grey. Now I didn't actually use full white or full black anywhere on this dragon until much later on. It's all just the grey shades at the moment, and just trying to keep in mind what parts would be a lighter colour and what parts would be a darker colour. I might do a video on this later just to help people who do want to shade in this way, because I have learned a lot of things about colours and what kind of shade they are. Things like red end up being need to have a lot darker shade underneath them than like yellow. So if you want a red dragon, you generally have to shade it in a much darker shade of grey before adding the colour on top, or you're just going to end up with this weird pinky orangey colour. Now, some people may ask, why do the shading separate to the color? And certainly I asked that question a lot, which is why I never explored this. I always thought it was kind of like doubling up and wondered why people wouldn't just shade with color to begin with. But since actually doing this, I have found that this has helped me a lot. It's helped me so much in defining my light and dark areas. It's made such a big improvement to my pictures. I do still combine the colors with the shadow later on and shade things in a bit better, but just looking at the black and white and gray tones means I can actually see how dark I'm shading a shadow or how light a highlight is going, and see the actual shape of the curves and muscles and legs and all that sort of thing. So I have found that changing to this way of coloring has helped me define shapes and shadow and light much better than I had previously. And this is one of the things I always sort of struggled with. I always found I wasn't pushing my lights and darks enough, and I'd always have to go over the picture again and push the colors more, where this sort of helps me define those shapes before even thinking about color. So I have found this technique to be very helpful for my own drawing. It also gives you the freedom to choose whatever color you want and not worry about destroying the form you've created underneath, which is another handy thing to have when you want to do like a random color challenge. So now I have this fully shaded dragon and I can just randomly choose colors for it at any time, and it's already a finished picture. And I do actually color this picture twice. I do a random color challenge and then I color it again later with the colors I would have chosen for myself. And if anybody wants this base, I will have it as a base that people can use and put their own colors on top. And again, if people would like me to create a video on exactly how to use a monotone picture and a color layer to create your own colored dragon, then let me know and I'll make up a video so people can sort of follow along and color their own monotone dragon base themselves. Shading all these individual scales is taking me forever, but I actually really like how some of them turn out. I really like how the leg scales turn out in particular. I just struggle with shading scales during like the body of the picture, because I do rely heavily on my smudge tool, but if you smudge scales too much then they stop being scales. So I had to be a bit more careful with my placing of the smudge tool and at what stage I smudged. That I needed to make sure that if I was going to blend things in with the smudge tool, that I did that before like defining the scales in that area. So you will see like sometimes I smudge an area and then I have to go back and redefine the scales because I made them smudgy. But I think they do look pretty good, especially once I color them. I especially, as I mentioned, I especially like the legs. Despite having struggled so much with the sketch of the legs in the beginning, I really liked how they turned out. I'm not super pleased with how the arm scales turned out. I think they kind of make it look flatter. It looks a bit like the arm isn't round enough, so I wasn't terribly happy with how that shading turned out, but I still think it looks good overall. And I did enjoy adding this shadow being cast from the wings and across the bottom of the tail in black and white. It was kind of cool to see that's where the shadow was going to be before I'd even added colors to it. So if you thought about doing this way of coloring before, I do recommend giving it a go. It's actually kind of fun. Even if you just end up making a black and white picture and don't add any color to it at all, I do think it looks really good in black and white, even with no color added to the picture. Now this is pretty much done. Much later on I do actually shade those wings more. At the moment they're just kind of flat, and I find this to be a problem when I do the random color challenge later. I tried to add patterns to the wings, but because they were just one flat tone, I couldn't really have different brightnesses and darknesses with my colors. So after I did the random color challenge, I did go back in and add some more shading to the wings, so that when you put the color over again there was actually some kind of pattern on the wings. And I did keep both versions with the flat wings and the pattern wings, so if anybody wants to use them, here they are. So here's the finished flat winged version, the original one, and here's with the pattern I added afterwards. I was trying to go for like a butterfly wing texture. Thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I do have a Patreon if you'd like to support me. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Bye!